Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Giovanni Rocco. He is a retired undercover police officer. He took down many criminal organizations. He's now an author. The name of his book is called Giovanni's Ring, My Life Inside the Real Sopranos. Giovanni infiltrated the DeCavalcante Crime Family, and today me and him go into depth about that and what it was like for him day to day going through this. Giovanni was an associate of this crime family. He almost became a made man. Giovanni got close to a lot of high-ranking bosses in this family. Giovanni's got a really interesting story, and his book really goes into detail about that. I'll put a link in the video description, and also please don't forget to hit subscribe to my channel. And without further ado, let's get into Giovanni's story. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing, H? Good. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it too. I mean, the book was really good. I enjoyed it, and I recommend it 100%, man. So
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. So the way I think we can start, we can begin with your early life, and kind of talk about growing up and what led you into not crime, but kind of wanting to be a police officer and stuff.
Yeah, I guess you were right. Your mistake was right on the money. I thought I was going to lead a life of crime. I didn't commit to it. I always thought I wanted to be a cop, but I never had faith in myself. The way I grew up, and the way I was always a bad student in school. I was poor. I guess my attention span was really bad, so I wasn't comparable to my brothers and sisters, and where they were like scholars, I was more of the get by as by the skin of my teeth kind of thing. So I never thought in a million years I'd become a police officer, let alone the successes that I had in my career as well. So yeah, none of that shit came to fruition.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how we fall into stuff. You know what I mean?
It is. But,
so when you were younger and stuff, you're growing up. I mean, was there a certain thing that happened that kind of made you want to get involved with the police?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always knew I had a burning desire inside, right? I write about it in the book. I tell the story about watching my dad make a collar on the way home from, I was a young kid at the time, and we were in Jersey City coming home from the movies, and it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. I remember it so vividly. And there's a guy on the side of the road, and he had been wanted for a series of vicious armed robberies and stuff that he was doing in the street. And, my old man, being a dedicated cop that he was, he had his family in the back seat, and he pulled over his squad car and, didn't even have a gun on him, took this guy down, and we watched it from the back window. And then he collared him up with the cops, and I watched it, and we brought the guys. My mother followed in a car to the precinct behind. That was the moment. That was the defining moment I knew. And then fast forward a few years, and all the summer schools that I had to attend, I did a lot of summer school. I love school so much. I went every summer. So, during the summer school, they made me write an essay. And ironically, in my process of being relocated, I found that essay, and I wrote about the reasons why. Amazing, right? Like it just pops up. And the reasons why I wanted to serve my community and protect people. And I'm a third generation cop. So yeah, I knew I had that desire, but I didn't have faith in myself. And it's so ironic, right? Your show is called Invest in Yourself. I didn't do that as a young kid. I didn't take the time to invest in myself, which I should have very early on, and had more faith in myself. I just listened to the negative parts. People would say to me, you're nothing. You're not going to be anything, and I should have stood up for myself a little bit more, and should have had a little bit more investment in myself. And it took me many years before that happened. And then, I got out of high school, and I worked in a phone company for a number of years, maybe 2 years. And I was just hungry for the street. I wanted all the bad areas, man. If there was a bad area in Jersey City, Newark, anywhere like that, I go figure. Who knew phone men and repair guys had 2-man areas, they called them. And I wanted to be in all those spots. They gave you combat pay to go in and, sign me up. You didn't have to pay me. So I always hungered for adrenaline. Yeah. So yeah, that was my defining moments, that I knew I wanted to be a police officer. But, and then one day my old man called me up and said, they were giving the police test and I should take it. I kind of chuckled. I said, well, I ain't got nothing else going on. I took a huge cut in pay. I had the combat areas, and I took a huge cut in pay to get into the police academy, which was, I could have retired a lot earlier,
but it's something that you enjoy and you would like, I mean, that's what life's more about, doing, whether you don't make as much as you want, but it's about, because I mean, we spend the majority of time at work, so if you're going to be working, man, you better enjoy it.
Right. And it's not about making fast money either, right? It is exactly what you said. taking the time to enjoy it and soak it up and invest in what you're doing with your life. And, and if you do those things, good things will come to you. I know that now at the age I'm at now. It took me a long time to figure that out, but
you just got to go through some, some shit before you realize that,
all of us do, no matter who we are, on either side of the law. It takes cops. I've seen cops be less successful than some of the guys I locked up in the street. They just had a secure job, but they everything they had, they wasted away, gambled away. I've seen it all on both sides. So good and bad on each side.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, what was it like? I mean, for you, I mean, you grew up in the area, and what was it like growing up in New Jersey, and what made you, because you knew where the crime was at, so that's probably what when you officially did become a police officer, you knew what areas to look in and stuff, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, I write about it in the book, but I grew up in the low income areas, right? Middle class to low income. Some of my family lived in the projects. My grandmother lived in the projects, which in case some of your listeners don't know, that's low income, housing, public housing. And, I was used to that. Like, we used to play tag and hide and seek in the basements where all the buildings connected. Everybody, it was very respectful back then, though. Not like today where we respected each other's properties. I remember going to my grandmother's and there might have been 5 apartments on each floor, and everybody took a week to mop the floors and the stairs in between flights. It's not like it is today. Now, some of these people, they live in a way that they don't have enough respect for themselves or their surroundings, that, what the young generations, that now they just use the elevator as a second bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was different growing up. Like, you could lock it. It was almost like the basements were stables, and they had wooden gates, and they're locked, and some were locked, and you kept your Christmas decorations down there or your personal belongings, and nobody messed with it. That's the kind of world we grew up in Jersey. And, but again, a lot of the kids I grew up with on the weekends were bad kids. A lot of them grew up to be murderers and, rapists and drug dealers. And so I was around that at a young age, but I always knew how to navigate the waters. And then when I went home to my parents' house, where we lived, it was more of a different neighborhood where it was working class people, middle class. It could be a fireman, a cop, and a gangster living on the same street. I played in a lot of made guys' backyards. Everybody knew who everybody was. And, my father, my mother, we shared, like, stay away from this guy. He's a hitman. We grew up that way. Stay away from this guy. Don't date this girl. Her father's in jail. He's in prison for murders, and he's going to get out and he's going to kill you, So, it was just a typical Jersey, inner city area. The riots in Newark, I didn't live through that, but I was post that through the 70s and 80s when I grew up. But it still had that feel to it. Everybody looked out for each other. So it was nothing for me to work in an Italian restaurant. And then again, I grew up in my mom would get me jobs in restaurants, washing dishes, and then, in cooking. And then I learned bookmaking. I learned all about bookmaking and gambling and, loan sharking. And, so I was always around these things.
Yeah.
So, it's an education on top of the one you were getting at school.
Yeah. And I think, even in the book, you kind of detail, a way in that you could have kind of ended up joining the mob in some kind of way. I mean, if you want to expand on that, like, because you had a family member that was, involved with the life, or an uncle.
Yeah, I had a few. Yeah, we had an understanding, and we lived amongst each other, right? But I had uncles that were truck drivers, uncles that worked for guys and were friends with guys in the life. Some of my best friends, their fathers were in the life. I was, I'd get in the truck and I write about it because it's just to see how I progressed through my years, and which allowed me ultimately to do the work that I did as an undercover. Just little things like, jumping in the truck and taking a ride with somebody. Where are we going? I don't know. I didn't know we weren't doing anything criminal, but then next thing you know, here I am in this McMansion down at the Jersey Shore. And, think of it like the cast of the Sopranos is out there. The most beautiful thing. I'm 15, 16 years old, and these big 8-foot doors open up, and it's, girls, topless girls, and bowls of cocaine. And, and as soon as my uncle looks around, because we were down there to pick up an item, some stuff that we needed to bring back. And I'm thinking they gave us 2 coolers, I'm going, what the hell is in this cooler? It wound up to be tuna. They went tuna fishing, and they gave us the tuna. And, and I would come home and I brought the tuna steaks. They gave us a smaller cooler for me and my uncle for bringing the, sounds strange, right? But it's just, they knew who I was. And, one of these things, don't tell your father we're here. Don't tell anybody, And then my uncle got me out of there real quick. And then they said, this cooler is for you. And that was a bunch of steaks. And I went home and told my mom where I got them, and I stuck them in the freezer. And, it's great because I write about it in a book that every time I busted out one of those steaks out of the freezer, our row house where we lived, a little 2-story row house. And I thought of that topless girl every time I ate one of those steaks.
Yeah, no, I remember that in the book. And, you were talking about, with your dad, if he would have found out, he would have been very upset or whatnot because, because that was your mom's brother, if I'm right. Is that right?
It's my uncle who was married into the family. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. But then some of my mom's uncles, like some of my uncles on that side of the family were like connected to outlaw biker guys. So I had that understanding. It was weird. I was given all these opportunities and all these, but I was attracted to the biker, right? I loved the sound of motorcycles. I loved hot rods and I loved that fast life. So my relationship with my dad was rocky growing up. So of course, anything I could do to defy him, it wasn't his fault. My dad raised us to be men. My dad raised us to be hard guys, and I can go on and give you examples of how, but I always describe to people when I do my talks, if Robert De Niro and Al Pacino had a baby together, that's my father. His mannerisms were, and he raised us very hard, and I appreciate that now. I'm not as hard on my kids, but I understand why he raised us the way he did, and I understand that because even the mob guys, no matter what criminal element it was, no matter what organization, they all respected my old man. Throughout wherever he was. And again, my family, so there's a balance and you have to find that balance, you can't be bought, you can't be sold, and that was a big thing in my neighborhood back then. You had to stand on your own, you had to survive. So,
yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely like a different area to grow in a different time because, like you said, you grow up with all these people with different, legit careers, and then you got the gangsters on the street as well, so like, but at the same time, everybody respects each other, as long as, no one messes with, their stuff, I'm sure. But, what was the cops' relationship with, the mafia back then, that from what you've seen? I mean, because I know some of them were in the pocket, but, they didn't. I mean, they wouldn't just go after cops for no reason, right? I mean,
no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't try to muscle the cops, right?
Right.
But again, just like they do with everybody, they try to paint you into a corner. If you had a gambler, if you were a degenerate gambler or whatever. Yeah, I've seen the best of both, right? I've seen the best of what police have to offer, and I've seen the worst of what it has to offer. Some of the cases I did undercover against police were some of the worst cases, right? Putting my own, I say my own, guys that wore badges and took the same oath that I took. When I held my hand and put my hand on that Bible, I believed in everything that I, from that moment going forward, there was nothing you could ever do to sway me away from that, and it's hard to describe, but even today, if I think about that moment and I talk about it with young cops today in academies, every cop that is a good cop, and that's 99% of them, right? It truly is. Yeah. Most guys will tell you that. When you raised your hand and you took that oath, you feel those chills today. When you hear certain bagpipes or certain music or something, it burns. That's that fire in your belly.
Yeah.
But there's other guys, man, they're straight up gangsters. Straight up gangsters. I've seen, some bad things that I got away from real quick, get away from them, and just step away and don't ever look back. And, I grew up around guys that, 2 generations before me wound up being they were mobsters that became cops for that reason, just to be, and wound up being hitmen, killed their bosses, so, yeah.
It's kind of like the whole Greg Scarpa, but he wasn't a cop.
Right. No, but same mentality, right? And when you work with ice cold guys, when you're around what in the underworld, what you refer to as a capable guy, when you're around a capable guy, right? And you probably have been. I don't know if I don't know how you grew up, but when you're around somebody and you look in their eyes and that they've done some things, and you don't understand that you haven't met anybody that has that. It's almost like this blackness to them, and you can tell.
There's some kind of darkness.
Yeah. Well, a lot of guys that I grew up around, my grandfathers and my father's generation, they saw war, so they were. True. And I think I speak to that a lot. They were used to. Unfortunately, there were soldiers fighting for our military that, they were used to it. They had to in battle, and now they came back and they didn't have an identity. So some of the guys that went to the criminal side, they already had the taste for blood or the taste for violence, and they had no problem doing the deeds. And it was strictly business. It was business.
Yeah. I mean, when you really think about it like that, a lot of them just came out of war and stuff. And, the select few that, became hitman and, wanted to, kind of join the mafia or whatever, didn't have a purpose. It kind of makes more sense, that it would be so easy for them and so much more violence back then, so
Yeah.
I guess that does, make sense. That's a good point you brought up.
Yeah. Kind of like the mental part of it is the brotherhood of the military. When you're at war with somebody and, it's not to compare, police aren't in war every day, but they're fighting for their lives at times, and you depend on each other to have each other's back. And when you have that type of brotherhood, not everybody becomes a cop when they come back from the military. So they're hungry for that brotherhood and they look for it. Some guys become outlaw bikers because it's the brotherhood. It's not the crimes and the violence that attracts them. It's the brotherhood that initially attracts them. And then hypermasculinity and the way to survive and swim in those waters. How do you swim in waters that are infested with great white sharks? You become a great white, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you do. So, kind of moving a little bit fast forward and, so when you became the police officer, you took the oath and everything. What did they have you doing at first?
I was a patrol cop. I mean, the only reason I made it through the academy, I went through the Jersey City Police Academy. If I had to go through like the New Jersey State Police where they had all these rules and, the marching and everything, they taught me how to be a street cop. And thank God for that, because I don't know if I would have survived any other. I wasn't cut from that cloth, I worked patrol right away, and I walked the beat for a long time and earned my way into a car. I think my first day in the car, I had a round come through the window. I think we were pulling out of the precinct and made a left turn, and the projectile came right between me and the guy that was my training officer. So that's how it was crazy. Like, had no idea where it came from and had no idea what it was. And so it was, you were right in, I think the first day on the job, and then before you know it, in patrol, I was in so many violent incidents. The first award I had gotten was all by accident. Some guy was hacking up his brother with a butcher knife in the projects, and I went there with a bunch of patrolmen, and we were fighting both brothers at the same time. And the brother was in the bathroom all cut up, and they were drunk. And here the other brother he sees the cops after he hacks his brother up, cuts his thumbs off and defense wounds and stuff. And then he just went back in the kitchen and got the knife and, comes down and tries to stab some of the cops. And, here I am. I'm a bag of bones. I'm a skinny kid right out of the academy. Right. And I was only a couple months on the job. And, I had grabbed him and I'm screaming for help because I dragged him into the living room and we fought it out. And I fought for my life. And then I thought I was going to lose my job. We all got to the ER. I had to get treated a little bit for, superficial wounds. And then my sergeant grabbed me and he says, come here, I want to talk to you. So I want to know what happened. I want to know everything. Tell me step by step. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's going to jam me up. Like, I just got this badge and gun. My old man's going to be so pissed off at me. And I told him the story and he says, yeah, that matches up to what everybody said. And, but let me ask you something. Why don't you just shoot him? You had every right. You fought for your life and this, you wrestled this guy with a butcher knife. And I said to him, I got to be honest with you, Sarge, the street guy came out at me and I forgot I had a gun. I literally forgot I was wearing a gun. Damn. So, and that's how it started. So, and then that kind of adrenaline, that's like somebody shooting a bag of heroin, you just get addicted to that kind of stuff, man. And it's like where the areas that I worked, you were just thrown into it every day if you wanted to be, as much as you wanted. And then I hooked up with some partners and my longtime partner, Timmy, I write about it. And, we worked nights and just every night was a pursuit or whatever we can kick up some dust. And then I worked with some great guys, great street guys that taught me the way and just really, really mentored me. And thank God for their training, because in my early career, they just taught me how to be a cop's cop, And then I was given the opportunity real early on to do some undercover work. And then from there, I dabbled in it and I left. I went back and came back. And then eventually I went into the DEA and I worked there for a long time.
So, I mean, I know it's in the book, but I mean, do you mind, discussing your first undercover work?
Yeah, it was a shit show. So I had no training, all the training was, so the way it came up was, I had an old chopper, an old motorcycle, and I came to work on it. And I write about it that, I'm on probation. I'm in that period of 9 months. And, I guess I got comfortable for a little bit. So I was still stuck in that biker lifestyle. Because I remember before I came on the job, I was in a tow yard with my uncle. And I literally said goodbye to all the 1% of guys that I knew. Because they said, look, are you serious? You really going to do this? Yeah, start the academy like, tomorrow. So I met them all in the yard and we had a toast and they wished me good luck and they wished me everything and literally said to me, look, next time we cross paths, we're not on the same team anymore, so it is what it is. I said, okay, I get it, but I guess I must have been missing it for a little bit because here I was, stupidly enough, I show up to work with a leather vest, a white t-shirt, my police pants, and I'm all geared up, but I don't have my gun in a holster. I just have it stuck in my pants, So I roll up with these ape hangers I have, or little skinny handlebars I had in the chopper. I borrowed my uncle's chopper, and my chief went crazy. And then he called me in a few weeks later, and he had said, "Look, you still got that bike," and he asked me, he offered me to do a little undercover deal with a guy selling guns and dope. And I went in there and thought, yeah, no issue, it's no heavy lift, guns and dope, like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I totally messed it up, without saving some time, but I totally screwed it up. The guns were stolen. I needed to buy a stolen gun, and I thought, I came out and I bought a machine gun instead, and totally screwed the case up. So then I realized they needed formal training. So I requested it and they sent me to state police and then DEA school. Right. Then they gave me another shot. And then, of course, like every good narc, I thought, if I put an earring in my ear and I grow a goatee, I'm a badass, right? Like every new narc does that, because it's against everything the police, don't want you to do. So I did that for a while. And then before you knew it, I took on my persona that I had as a young kid. And I just continued to grow my beard and grow my hair down to my ass. And, and then before you know it, here I am showing up to parades and tucking my braid, big long braid under my hat. And so I loved it. I was an outcast, and I loved every bit of being an outcast, right? Because it goes to what I was as a kid. So, and then I got all the formal training and then again, eventually I started working with the FBI.
Yeah. And, eventually they kind of just brought it up to you that, hey, do you want to take this case on? And, because I suppose, we're not missing anything, in between, when from that point until, you went and did the, the real life Sopranos, you went into taking down the DeCavalcante Crime Family.
No, I started my career early, Adrian. I mean, when I started doing undercover work, the Colombians were running the show. Pablo Escobar was, his cartels were still running things. And so I dealt with a lot of the Colombians and Cubans. So what happened was that my persona was great because I was a skinny white guy. I looked like a little bit of a meth head. I had that really, I had an outlaw look to me. So nobody ever questioned it, right? I had that street knowledge. So I really just showed up as myself at the time. And then not having the right training, you could really screw up bad, and I did. And a couple of times, some gangsters put me back in, street gangsters, corner boys. Some corner boys taught me a lesson and put me back in my car at gunpoint. And, but stupidly enough, I still wouldn't give up. Like I was so stupid that I was fixated on, I'm not going to ruin my reputation, right? I got a great batting record here. I'm not leaving here empty handed. I want my dope. So with these guns pointed at me, I still negotiated and bought the dope, so I felt like a superhero. But then I guess I started a family, and I was young and I was married, and I thought, again, it's cool, right? Now I'm doing DEA cases, and my neighbors actually reported me to the DEA. So I knew, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is great. This is pretty cool. So, yeah. And then after a while I did pretty stupid things for the job, and I really pushed the limits, and I realized, I'm done. Either you're going to get me killed or I'm going to get myself killed. So I'm going to take a break from this for a little bit. I shaved, cut my hair, came in looking like, Joe Agent,
yeah.
College shirt. And they were like, what the hell did you do? I'll teach you a lesson. I'm done. I'm done doing it. And then I think that might have been on a Monday. By that Friday, I was buying major weight from Colombians and Cubans and, Maralitos, the guys from, from all the guys that came over off the boat off of Cuba, all the hit guys, all the murderers. So, it was, that's what I did early on. And then I made a reputation for myself. And then by the time the Bureau came calling, I was working some cases with them, and then they knew my reputation of working undercover. And then somebody had brought up the fact that maybe they should train me to be an undercover with the FBI. You have to go through their school. It's intense. And you have to be proposed for it and stuff and all kinds of crazy stuff. But, and then they thought, no, we can't do it. He's too broken. Like you can never train this guy. He's so set in his ways. But at that point in my career, I knew I needed training, because if you were a young guy coming up under me and I was going to bring you out in the field with me and do ops, God forbid I retired. Now I'm sitting on a beach someplace, or I'm sitting in my mountain cabin, and you're out in the street. And everything I taught you was just what I knew. And you go and get clipped, or you go and get hurt. I got to live with that, you know? Yeah. So when they gave me my bureau training, I was invested 1,000%. And that really, that changed everything in my whole way of thinking, you know, everything.
Yeah. No, I remember, you know, you saying in the book, I mean, like, it was just such a detailed course on, you know, everything, you know what I mean, that they had to train you. And I mean, you said not a whole lot of people pass, right? I mean,
no. It's the craziest thing. I don't talk too much about it because they don't like me talking trade crap, but I could say it's like you put all this money into training, and you scratch your head, you go, but you put all these people in, but only a few really graduate, right? Because, and then I look at it and go, they do want the cream of the crop. They want the best of the best.
Yeah.
And it's stressful, you know, because you went from being a street kid, what I did, maybe buying some dope and some guns, to literally working all over the globe. You know, you could do cases in Italy, you could do cases in the DR, you could do cases anywhere, and you could do foreign counterintelligence spies, like really, you know, true spy stuff. Yeah. And you know, here I was, a street kid from Jersey, training me to be a spy. What are you, crazy? But when you apply it, it really works. So yeah.
So after you, you know, I suppose graduated and passed the courses, you know, what did it look like after that for you? Did they offer?
I was right into the mix. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My first meeting was with a bunch of, they already had some cases going that they brought me in, because we say it all the time that I had the stink. I had that stink on me already.
Yeah.
Right? So now I came in as bona fides. I came in as, you know, I was the kid, like, you know, I could be a gentleman if you wanted me to, but I could be a complete outlaw at the same time. So I would dial it down or dial it up. And so right away, I you know, some of the cases I write about in the book, like right out of the gate, and I was just being myself, you know, nervous as hell, and just, you know, sitting there. And then I quickly realized guys they just assumed I was a gangster, just assumed that I had I guess my accent and, you know, the way I present myself. I never threatened anybody. I wasn't a threat unless I had to be. But yeah, you know, and then they would just bring me in right away. It was right in. And again, going back to the analogy before, I just right into the pool of great white sharks and start swimming. You know, it's like, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I mean, just to go straight into the mix. I mean, because you know, when you're an undercover cop, I mean, from your book and everything, you know, they give you a fake identity. They give you, you know, they give you everything, but it's legit, you know, like the bank account, the ID, you know, what you had a few places you would stay at and everything, you know, so everything had to be legit, just in case, you know, someone wanted to run your numbers, because, you know, the criminals, you know, who would they even they call, you know, to you know, confirm that you're a legit person, you know, I mean, like, because didn't you have situations like that where, you know, the criminal had, you know, ran a background on you?
Yeah. Early on, just to show you how far everything's come in decades that I worked. When I first started working undercover work, I went to Times Square in 1991, and I got a fake ID for $25. I went downstairs to one of these little shops in Times Square, you know, like just like we did in high school when everybody wanted a fake ID. That's where I got it. I went there and bought it off a bunch of guys, which were later known to be Al Qaeda. And, you know, that's where I bought my first ID. And that's the way I rolled, you know, and it was crazy because I picked an address that I knew and I was familiar with. And then just to show you how you can get tripped up, my first case ever, like a long-term case, which was probably about 6 months, 3 to 6 months. And it was a biker type case. And I walked into a house, I got locked in the house, and I was with an informant, and the informant introduced me, and I had my license on me, and I had you know, created my legend, as we call it, where I was from. And I wasn't from Jersey. I was a Florida kid. And I came up with this address, and the dude that was selling me dope, he's like, wait a minute. I lived there. I know that exact town. What street did you live on? I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Is this guy messing with me? But that's Murphy's Law in our world, right? Mm-hmm. If it can happen, it will. So, yeah. And the dude laid out the dope, and he says, all right, I got different grades, and we're sitting here all night. You're going to try a little bit of everything. And, you know, that's how it's going to go. And you better be able to talk your way out of that. Again, I was a young kid and I didn't have the skills. Thank God that actually in that case, that was one of my early on. My informant was just a good guy who actually saved my ass.
So, damn.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and then fast forward to your question was the length and the depth. By the time I retired, I think I had 3 to 4 legitimate IDs, like Social Security numbers, dates of birth, credit histories, everything. So in this day and age, if I want to know anything about Invest Yourself, I just Google it and I'm going to find it.
Yeah,
Back
it's a lot different.
Back to what size diapers you wore when you were a kid, right? You can find anything. So you better have your shit together in this world, because now it's even it's bad.
So when I mean, some of these questions, I mean, I already know, I mean, but just for the people that haven't heard, I mean, what was the moment when they brought you this case, to go and infiltrate the DeCavalcante crime family?
Yeah, so that was just a cameo, we call it. And what I said earlier was just a guy I knew was doing a deal down in Atlantic City, and he called me up and he asked me, you doing anything tonight? You want to come down? I got these guys coming, low hanging fruit. And, it wasn't even an organized crime case. It was just a dope case. And some of the guys were shooters, some of the guys had. So I guess the idea was to trigger lock some of them, which was to put some federal charges on them, get them to a certain threshold. And then, that's a pretty good case federally, right? If you get some guys that have a pretty violent history and they got a criminal history already, you do a good case on them and you put them to bed. That's kind of how it was, low hanging fruit. But just the way that we came off that night, I was in a pissy mood naturally, right? Unrelated. I wasn't trying to act it. My wife was mad at me that I was going down to AC on a Sunday night and to do a deal. And, so the thing took forever, dragged on and on and on. So here I'm really mad because I could hear my wife just complaining in my ear and yelling at me in the morning. So, it's just the way we came off. By the time these guys showed up, I was just Giovanni, the scumbag, and just I wouldn't even talk to them. I was watching a Yankee game. I shoved food at them, and and they just created something in their head. And they thought because they came down by Philly, wow, these guys got to be Philly gangsters, So they created this legend on their own and went back and told everybody, but we didn't care, And then before you know it, it kind of like we didn't know the guys that we were dealing with were connected to the DeCavalcantes. Very, very low hanging fruit. You got wannabes. They were even lower than wannabes. They were just hang-arounds. Yeah. But when they talked about us, like everything else, like so who's this guy? Who are you with? Next thing you know, I started trading them goods. Boots, Uggs, and all kinds of stuff, swag for the dope. And then he was selling it in the street. Next thing you know, guys in the street were like, where are you getting all this stuff? So, and that guy wanted to meet me and another guy wanted to meet me. So, and then eventually it went up the chain. And that one of the guys that we wound up dealing with, his uncle was a connected guy who was just getting out of prison at the time. And he was in for like a 20-year bid or something, 14 years for a murder. And, that wound up being a guy that was a made guy inside the DeCavalcantes. And then he eventually wanted to meet us. So, but he was street smart in a way that he wouldn't meet me right away. He had some Gambino guys meet me to vet me out. And then after I passed that, sniff test, then he came around and before you know it, here you are a couple of years later and you're working your way in, you're in. I mean, so it wasn't anything we planned. It wasn't like, I would love to say that the Bureau is that smart that we planned it out like an NFL football team, but we didn't, it just kind of morphed. I am who I am. I had the accent, I had the dialect, I had the attitude. I really can't say what it was or just this connection with this guy or a bunch of guys I had the connection with. And it's just, it just took a life on of its own. So.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I always mispronounce it. The DeCavalcante crime family, Decav. I don't know. I don't know. I always say it wrong, but I mean, like, they were, in New Jersey, and they were pretty quiet, right? I mean, you hear the 5 families, the Traficantes, Chicago outfit and everything, but with them, kind of break down with them because they had what 50 made members or something like that. I mean, why were they so small? And
well, they were small because they were they had a big New York faction and their Jersey faction was a little bit smaller. So yeah, they were one of the original crime families in the country, but they just never rose to the I guess when Luciano put his commission together, they weren't part of it. I guess they didn't have whoever it was. Sam the plumber was the boss back then, Sam DeCavalcante. And Sam the plumber, DeCavalcante, he's the one that was the boss of the original family. And yeah, but these guys go back so far that the Appalachian meetings, you know, some of the guys that I was dealing with, the street boss that I had met and the boss of the family at the time, their family, their fathers were at the Appalachian meetings. So it's only one generation removed, right? And here I am. It's insane. So here I went from being an investigator to now I watch these guys. I watched the Decavs and the Gambinos and the Lucchese's, all 5 families. I watched at funerals, and I was in organized crime task forces, and I would sit in the car and sneak in the van and take pictures at this. So I was familiar with some of these guys. So now here I am living this life where I still had my old pictures, and I still have them to this day, of when I was in the 90s, in the early 90s. They're going to the same restaurants that I had my prom or whatever I had, you know, like, you know, and here I am outside in the van taking pictures, and now I'm sitting in front of them, and I'm, you know, an associate of theirs. So yeah, so the Decavs, they're longstanding, but they were always known as the farmers because the other families, the Gambino ones especially, would farm out work to them, and anything they needed done. A lot of guys from the old country in Sicily would come over. They call them zips, right? Now some people say they call them zips because they would fly them in from Sicily. And back in the day, guys would do the hit. They chop a body up and then they zip them back, right? They zip them back there. So a lot of these guys were from the old country, and and that's the thing that makes the Decav so hard to infiltrate, and especially in Elizabeth. Elizabeth, New Jersey was their stronghold for the Jersey faction. And think about it, you know, it's this very, very small neighborhood. They controlled it. Everybody within the family they know each other. The Ribera Club was on a street corner back then. It wasn't where it is now. And they controlled everything, you know, so anything coming in and out, they knew everyone. And now here I am, an outsider, you know, so it was really strange how things worked out. But yeah, they tried to legitimize themselves. They were legitimate family. I can't say they were illegitimate. John Riggy ran the family, and he was so smart the way he ran it like a business that he had all the unions in his pockets, right? And unions and whatever he had going on with construction companies and, you know, throughout the 90s, that all the other families would have to come to him. You know, even though they're the 5 families, they would still have to come to them to get these contracts and get a piece of it. Bridge work around New Jersey and New York, all the bridges and tunnels and all the, you know, they always try to weasel their way into whatever they could. All the high rises going up, you know, anything you saw in the way of a high rise going up, these guys were attached to.
Damn. Like so they were involved deeply, and you know, and then like you said, here you are just becoming an associate. You know, at this point where we're at, and you know, when you became an associate, I mean, you were closely with what was his name? It was Luigi, and then
I came in under a kid named Jimmy Smalls, and Jimmy Smalls, I was doing business with him, but everybody kind of knew in the street he was a street kid. You know, not to say he wasn't a good criminal. It's just that he was a street kid. He was. If you needed him, he was a capable kid. You know, if you needed to be a shooter, he could be a shooter. If you needed him as muscle. But you definitely weren't paying him from the neck up, right? You weren't paying him to be a thinker. So they looked at him, as it was explained to me. And then I guess because here's a guy like me, a little bit more polished, that they look at it and go, how are you getting all this stuff? And then next thing you know, this guy Luigi says, I want to meet this guy. And then Luigi, the day I met him, he kind of chuckled at me. You know, he kind of like looked me up and down and snickered. You know, because here I was in nice jeans, nice button-down shirt, and the way I was dressed. I wasn't trying to be an actor or play a part. I was just myself. I never proclaimed to be a gangster. I never explained my outlaw background until much later, until I made them pull it out of me.
Yeah.
And, you know, he kind of chuckled. But then when he got to know me and we did business together, our money was always on time and our money was right. So, yeah, just a relationship built there. But then it made it very difficult for me because the Bureau would quickly pivot. You know, think about this as an undercover. Like, okay, you're dealing with Jimmy. Now forget Jimmy. Start dealing with this guy, Louie. Forget Louie. Start dealing with this guy, Charlie. Okay, but now, you know, start dealing with this guy, Adrian. But Adrian's going to be mad at me because he's not making money off of me anymore. But you want me to disregard him? So what do you want me to? He's just going to come up and rob me. And that's the way it is in the street, right? So you're dealing with capable guys who will just clip you for nothing. They'll rob you, you know. And in that world, it's on the low scale, you know, you're dealing with guys who are street thugs. Like if they needed to pay a bill or they had a debt due and they owed somebody money and you had that money, today's your day. like you or not, I'm robbing you. You know, I owe somebody 20 grand. I'm doing a deal with Giovanni today. I know he's coming with 20 grand. Sorry, G. Today's your day. You know? So, and that's how fast it happens in the street.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, and for you to, like switch and pivot to different people, that made it even more of a reason for them to go to you. Or, it didn't happen obviously, but more of a reason for them to, want to go after you and rob you or kill you or whatever. But luckily that didn't happen, and you were able to continue to advance into the family. So what I was curious is too, like how does when they make money, and you have to kick up money to people, so that's like the government. They give you like money that they have, or how does that work? I've always wondered that. Like how they give criminals money, or how do they do drug deals? Or like you said you were doing swag and stuff. I mean, that's nothing, right? So was that how you made your income for the decavs, and that's how you're kicking up money at this?
Yeah, it depends on the case. Like this case in particular was I was a street guy with the ability to get a hold of stolen merchandise. Now, I didn't say how I got it. I just had it,
Yeah.
And if you guessed me where you were getting it from, right? Like if I had a box of Timberlands and I asked you if you wanted to pay $20 for Timberlands, you're going to ask me where I got them?
No.
If you did ask me where I got them, I'd be like, do you want them or not?
Yeah.
So you got to be careful but then again, if a guy comes to you, he's an older guy like Charlie Stango or somebody like a John Gotti came to you and said, where you getting your shoes? I want to know now. Well, then guess what? I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you the serial number. I'm going to tell you the size of the boots. I'm going to tell you everything you want to know, right? So you got to play this little bit of a game. But yeah, they knew I had this stuff. I didn't make it known. I was a hustler, just like everybody else is in the street. And then they would come to me. And they'd say, okay, great. You got Marlboro cigarettes. You got this, you got that. Can you get me Newports? Because in the street, Newports are gold, right? Nobody has Newports. No. Now, if I say right away, oh yeah, I got a truckload of Newports. No, I don't. Nobody has a truckload of Newports, So you got to keep that balance too. So I would have shitty cigarettes. If you want them, you want them. If you don't, you don't. And then eventually I got good ones. And then if I liked you and your money was good, I'd call you and say, look, I got a good load. You want it? And I give you first claim.
Right.
And then because of that, my relationship built with you, and I built a little bit of rapport. And then eventually, when you and I are making money together, then a guy like Luigi goes, wait a minute, why are you doing that with him? You were making good money with me. And then it gets jealous, right? And then it's like dating in grade school. It kind of is. And then next thing you know, you got to come up with a reason why. You can't turn around and say, well, the FBI told me not to deal with you anymore. And they told me that you want to target this guy over here. You better have a reason. So, I tried to keep that balance where everybody could come to me. But I was in this family at a time when I was coming into this family at a time when the boss was getting ready to step down. The long-term boss of the family, John Riggy, he was very old. And he was probably in his 90s by then. He had just gotten out of prison, also on a racketeering bid.
Right.
And he was getting ready to pass the torch. So I came to this family at a very tumultuous time. There was a divide in the family, so I had to pick a side. And I can't pick it because then I'm alienating some of these guys. So next thing you know, just to fast forward for you in the audience, it's Luigi and Charlie had to go to a sit down over who was going to have me. They both wanted me, and they both wanted to claim me because I was an earner. And that's the big thing in that life is to earn. Yeah. And eventually I caused a sit down. That's not good. You don't want to cause sit downs. Any gangster will tell you, you don't want to be the reason the administration, the bosses have to get together and have a sit down, because at the end of that, if it's going to create too much tension in the family, listen, this guy, Giovanni, he could walk on water, but he's causing too many problems. Just get rid of him. That could be a verdict. So, and you never know. It's not like they're going to come and tell you.
No. So, how did you eventually get close with, Charlie? Because he was the capo.
Yeah, I gave it time. He came to me. He met me very standoffish when I first met him. And then eventually, he says, maybe I'll call you, maybe I won't, because he is a gangster's gangster,
Yeah.
He is the epitome of what I described earlier to you. And, I got to be honest, part of me was like, I hope you don't ever call me, But greed is everything, right? So eventually he did reach out, but he gave it a while. And he kept tabs on me through the street. And then he realized that I was an earner. and people were making money off of me. And then that time came and he reached out. And then for a long time, we just built a relationship. And, I just hung around him. I was, just reported to him, and just eventually he decided, all right, I'm going to claim him. And he put a claim on me. And then when he put the claim on me, that's when the sit down happened. And then after the sit down happened, that was it. Then it was really, really tumultuous, because the war inside the family kind of started brewing on who was going to take the leadership. And then, so the family was having some difficult times. But then I had this absolute lunatic, imagine a guy that says to you, listen, I kill more people by accident, or, he gave me permission. And then here I got called to a meeting, and then he told me basically, just listen, that's it. Wherever you go now, you stick the flag in the dirt and you let everybody know you're with the decavs, with the decavs, and don't ever take a meeting without letting somebody, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's bikers. I don't care if it's Chinese. I don't care if it's Russian. No matter where you go, you stick your flag in the dirt. You tell them who you are. You tell them who you're with, and you tell them who you speak for. So, and that kind of as an investigator, you would think everybody's high-fiving, right? Not me. Yeah. Not me. Because I got to go home to my apartment, like you said earlier. I have all these little places I might hang my hat. Not my family. Not with my family. Not with my true family.
Right.
And, who do I talk to, right? And then it turns into, and it's no fault of the other investigators, but when they don't understand, they think you're becoming a gangster. And then you don't know what side, not that I lost sight of what side I'm on. I'm just saying that sometimes snide remarks are made. Listen, could you not make this a 4-hour bowl of macaroni today with your friends? And I get it. Guys are like, but I don't decide how long a meeting is going to be. Right.
Right.
And then I come out of the meeting and it's like, really? 4 hours with your friends? Guys, these guys are not my friends,
Right.
And I have to remind myself that not every investigator has the emotional intelligence, right? So some guys are just hungry for their cases. And as undercovers, we're the last tool in the toolbox that people bring out. You just don't throw an undercover at somebody. We're a valued asset, and you don't want to just use it. But when you get a case agent that might be young, not saying that these case agents in this case were, I worked other cases where they just, they completely just told. They told me what to say when I went into cases, what sentences they wanted. Like, no, it's not. This is not a play. We're not doing a school play here.
Yeah.
The director. So you have to find this balance, and you get lost a little bit, right? You get, you start to find yourself, okay, now I'm sitting in this dark apartment. Where do I go? Who do I call? Who are my friends? And, your phone's blowing up, and, the bad guys are looking out for you, and the good guys are too. But, that's why we have what we call contact agents. Guys would reach out to me. I had guys I can always call and guys that I would stay in touch with. It's not like I was in the dark by myself. But it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say too. At the time, when that war was going on, was there any like hits that went on, or did they keep it pretty on the calm side?
It was boiling over. So it was, and my guy. I say my guy, my skipper, Charlie. Yeah, he didn't mind if he had to take a cup of gas and throw it on a fire. He didn't give a shit. He was a street guy. He didn't mind, flaring things up. I would say towards the end, when I was running I was running a crew. So, and then eventually his son, Charlie's son, was reporting to me. It's not like I made that happen. He just called me up one day and said, that's it. He's going to start reporting to you. So as that happened, then before you knew it, I had a crew of guys around me that were reporting to me every day. And then we were planning crimes and doing things together. And now they wanted to do things, and they would come to me with ideas, a hijacking or, a home invasion or something. And I would have to thwart it, and we don't do home invasions, undercover agents. We don't do that type of stuff. So, it's one of these things where you have to figure a way out. So that was a slippery slope. And then eventually, towards the end of the case, guys were sending text messages. Other crews were sending text messages to my guys. And then my guys were coming to me, look at this. They're sending me this. Let's go. Let's strap up. Let's go get them. Nope. So you had to control it. It was like, you didn't have enough hands to control all the puppets. So it did spin out of control. So not that I know that anybody got clipped. They threatened to chop me up into pieces at one point because some things happened, some things happened. I'll leave it for the readers to read in the book, but things went sour for me. you know, and it wasn't a mistake. Some things went horribly wrong. Some of my cover teams got burned. So, and then I didn't know, and I got called out on it. And, you know, then they threatened to chop me up into pieces at one point. And just, you know, again, you can't just panic, and you have to have complete control of your emotions. So,
yeah. Who ultimately did become the boss of that family then?
I don't want to say who became the boss. It's probably online who the boss is now, because I don't want to put it out there. You know, I don't want to be the guy to blow up his spot. But I will say it's one of the guys that has always had. He's always been in line for the seat. You know, you can Google it. It's online. And I think the guy that everybody wanted it became. You know, and I think right now, I think that's why the family's been so quiet, probably because they got what they wanted, and you know, everything is the way it is. Some of the guys passed away. I met some serious gangsters, the older guys that have passed away and since gone, since the case ended. These guys are old school gangsters. You know, I would go to their houses to pay kick up, even though they were the capos in other crews. I would always suggest to my capo, why don't you let me go bring the money? Nah, fuck that. Let his guy pay him. But as an agent, I would have to turn around and say, well, why don't you let me do it? You know, what if he doesn't get it? I want to make sure he gets all his, you know, everything that's due to him. You know, that's your gumbad. Let me go take care of him. You know,
right. And just to get the physical proof that you gave them money, right?
Yeah. And then here I am paying this guy off one day, and he's looking at me as if, you know, you got to understand by that point in the case, this guy came up with my capo, and he's got me in the basement of his house. Come on, let's go downstairs. You know, so we go downstairs in the basement. He says, you know, this guy, you know, I'm gonna clip him. And now he's telling me he's gonna kill a guy. You know, and I'm trying to, he's a good guy. What do you want to clip him for? Now I'm trying to talk him off the ledge, but I can't tell him what to do. You know, and he's like, no, I'm telling you right now, if I find out he's down here in my backyard, I don't care. And this guy's on an oxygen tank. You know, he's like, I will leave the house, and I know he would because he has. He's on a bracelet. You know, so yeah, things like that. You had to be really careful. And there he is saying, you know, go back and tell your father. Not go back and tell your skipper. You know, that's the point I was at this case. Go back and tell your father this, you know. And when you leave here, just be really careful. You know, right now is a bad time for us, and, you know, stay on the right path. And, you know, because he warned me about the brewing war or whatever was going to happen. And thank God nothing ever popped off.
Yeah. I mean, because it could have been really bad. I mean, because, you know, as an undercover agent, you can't be involved in murders and stuff. So, you know, and then if you hear them say, oh, I'm going to kill this guy, I mean, you got to try and talk them off from doing that. And from the book, I mean, you know, we can leave it for people to read, but, you know, there was multiple situations where you had to do that. And, you know, you held your ground, and you didn't let them budge. You know, I mean, you made solid arguments for them not to do it. They're like, they're like, oh yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, because that I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but I mean, you would just say, hey, you're gonna piss this guy off, you know, if you do that, you know.
Yeah, who are you to tell me how to run? I've been in it. You know, you can. That's how fast something can break bad for you in this world. Underworlds. Like I had cases where I did another organized crime case years before this, and I thought I was close to this guy, you know, and I was doing collections, and I made suggestions on how to do business. And I almost got myself killed.
Yeah.
And here this little old man showed me what a killer he was and said, and it kind of referred back what I said about the guy. He goes, did I ask you? I don't pay you from the neck up, you know? And he paid me to do certain things in the street, not because I was this big, you know, steroid freak, just because I was a smart kid and I had connections. And he looked at me and said, I didn't ask your opinion. If I want your opinion, I'll ask you. I didn't ask you for it. You could get clipped just like that. There was a guy in a family when I was working in investigation, and the boss of the family whacked the guy out the night at dinner because the guy down the end of the table and his crew kept sneezing all night.
Jeez, just for nothing.
God. Nothing. Wow. And the guy kept sneezing and sneezing and sneezing. And then, you know, and we had an informant at the table, and that's, you know, I can't have it. I can't. What's he doing? I can't. What's with this? Yeah, he's got you know, he's not sick. He's got allergies. He said I can't have it. I can't. It's a bad look. It makes me look bad. Look at him down there. And by that night, he decided, almost like a scene out of like a Goodfellas or something, right? Like it happens that fast. And I can't have it. I can't have it. He's got to go. Yeah. And he went.
I mean, it's just, I mean, that literally does sound like it'd be out of one of them movies. I mean, you know, they don't want to look weak is what they say or whatever, but
yeah.
fuck, it's just allergies, man. And then boom, just like that, gone.
Allergies in a tissue, you know, just, I had a guy one time, he was in another family and I was tight with him and we were doing business. And he said to me, gee, you know, I don't know. You know, it can end for us any day. I don't know how to converse. I used to have coffee with him on a regular basis because our two families did business together. And he said, you know, I've been on the other side, meaning he was a shooter. And he says, you know, this thing could end for us any day. You know, I don't even know what it's going to be like. I don't know and he's describing, you know, I guess he's so nervous about getting clipped himself that he's processing it, talking to me out loud. And he says, you know, and now he's planting a seed in my head. And he's like, you know, listen, hopefully, you know, I don't even know if you'll hit a pop in the back of the head, you know, and he's saying with such detail and he's trying to describe to me what he's done in the past. And he's like, you know, I don't know, maybe you hit a pop, maybe you don't, but you know, this thing could be short lived. We could be done today. You know, you never know. So just watch your ass and just, you know, be careful. Cause he used to give me ideas and tips because, you know, some of these guys were hard to handle, you know, and I used to say to him, you know, like, these guys are tough. Yeah, my guy's the same way, but you know, just be careful. Don't overstep the bounds. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really, I don't know, like you said, you really hear the details and everything from them. You know, it's like you know they're being truthful about, you know, shit that they've done. You know, the way that they explain shit. And you're like, damn, he ain't bullshitting. He's really been about it. You know.
Yeah, I made the mistake of one time saying he's a great guy. Oh, he's a great guy. What are you kidding me? He's the best. He says, let me tell you about him. He's great. If you ever need him, he's at your disposal. But let me tell you something, Giovanni. He can cut up a body, no gloves. I watched him eat a sandwich while he cut up a body. You know, like just to brag about a guy. Like, and I'm like, and what do you say to that? You know, today I listened back at that tape. You know, I chuckle because I hear the nervousness in my voice, right? You know, nobody else does, but when I hear it, I know because I was shitting in my pants when you make that description. And my response is, yeah, sounds like a great guy. You know, sounds like a fucking great guy. Phenomenal guy, you know?
Oh.
So, you know, that's the kind of treacherous waters you're swimming in. So.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. You know, so what was, you know, when you first started getting involved with, you know, Charlie, you know, you guys were doing a lot of phone talking on the phone because he was in Vegas, right? Or he was in prison. Was it prison or Vegas?
No, he was out. He was on parole in Florida and he was transferring to Vegas. So he moved out to Nevada is where he moved out to Nevada.
Okay.
And then he was out there and things were going great. And again, I write about it in the book, but I don't want to give it all away, but he had a bad dream. And he called me up and left me a message and don't ever call me back.
Yeah, no, that was when you told me, or when I heard it in the book, I was like, damn, dude, that's straight up paranoia right there, you know, because, I mean, but he knew, I mean, to some extent he knew, right, what was going on. I mean.
No, I think, I don't know what it was. It was paranoia or it was maybe his gut, like I described, like my gut. I go with my gut with everything in life, right? Because it's from the street. And a lot of guys go with their gut, right?
Yeah.
I like you. You're a good guy. There's just something about you that I can't put my finger on. I'm like that to this day with people. You know, so I say to my wife all the time, like, I don't like them. I don't want to be friends with them. Why? They're good. I just something about them. I don't like them. And that's it. I made my decision and I'm done. You know, you can't buy your way into my friendship at that point.
Right.
So, but with him, he called me up and left me a message, a detailed message. And, you know, it was eerie and don't ever call me back. And do yourself a favor. Don't ever set my nephew up either. So he didn't think I was a cop. He didn't think I was he didn't think I was an undercover agent. He thought I was a rat.
Oh, okay.
In my world, you don't want to be known as a rat.
Right. At all.
You get disposed of quickly.
Yeah.
So that was tough waters to navigate. Again, I knew I spoke that language and I knew exactly what he was saying to me, right? So going back to my childhood, working in the restaurants, working and being around these guys, I knew exactly what he was saying to me. Listen, do yourself a favor, kid. Don't ever call me back. And if you do, I will kill you. You'll never find you. I got your message loud and clear. But again, there's that burning desire in me, never to fail, right? And my desire for my adrenaline rush that I fought tooth and nail. My supervisor, Anthony Zamponia, he had a very, very good knowledge of DeCavalcantes because Anthony worked in the New York office coming up as an investigator, as an FBI agent. And he worked at DeCavs and knew these guys intimately. So imagine here I am. I'm working for Anthony. He's my direct supervisor. He's now overseeing this case. I couldn't ask for a better boss because he really understood, you know. And he asked me, he sat me down, and there were other people down in Washington in the Hoover building that were like, nope, we're done. This case is over. This is book closed. Lock it up. We're not doing this. You know, we're not putting your life in risk. Stupid me, you know. Anthony and me talked it over, and we figured out a way to navigate it, you know, and we were careful about it. And let me tell you, it took a long time, you know, meetings with executives and people in the bureau, and we begged and said, listen, give us a shot, you know. Just let us see what we can make happen. And that's how it really got off to a jump start. And Anthony trusted me, and I trusted Anthony in his decision, and I knew he had my back. And before you knew it, I just kept rolling in the street, right? I kept making money, and I just didn't have anything to do with Charlie. But then again, he kept those tabs on me. So when he found out about the money I was making in the street with other families, you know, he came back and said, so you're making money, you know? So you like him? He's a good kid. Yeah, everything's good. Well, you know he's with me, right? You know I put him out there. So yeah, he put a claim on me, and then he called me up one day. I made him work for it. You know, we made him work for it. Really, really made him work. The guys that I worked with, we came up with a plan, and it was a good plan. And he called me back one day, and the greedier part of him got the best of him, and that was it. He says, "Come and see me in Vegas." I said, "No way, no way. Come and see you." But we did it on our terms, and I did. I went and took a meeting with him. And I went out to Vegas, and it was during a Kentucky Derby. So, you know, we sat at my hotel, and we got a little cabana and sat there all day. And he didn't say anything to me. He was real careful. And, you know, he wanted to make sure he was very, very careful what he said. And eventually he warmed up to me, you know, and then we had a conversation, and he laid it out for me. I never claimed to know the life. I always made it an education. You know, even when Jimmy said to me, when he tried to win me, when Louie and Jimmy were arguing over me and who was going to make money with me, Jimmy came to me and said, you know, well, you know, you should be with me, or, you know, be making money with me. My uncle's a captain. And I turn around and I go, your uncle's a cop? No. No. You know, and he goes, well, he's not a captain. He's a soldier. He's in the Army. So what does that have to do with me? And I mean, that's how really I had to make these guys work for it. And then he's like, no, Jay, like, you know, he's with a family. You don't know about this? Like, no, what are you talking about? So, oh, I get it. All right. I thought you were trying to tell me he's a military guy. I heard of this stuff before. I grew up around it, but I don't know anything about it. I was a biker. Right? And that's what I reverted back to. I reverted back to my youth. And I said, no, I don't know about that stuff. You know, I might have that heritage, and I might have that Italian bloodline, but I don't know anything. I don't know about it. So even coming up, Charlie would say to me, like, look, I'm going to lay it out for you. Well, I need you to, because I don't know anything about this life. So if I'm going to be in it, you know, and he did. I mean, when I tell you it was like a teacher, a professor, and a student sitting down, and I made him. At times I frustrated him because I went too far. And, you know, for evidence purposes, I would always push the limit. And we met with a boss of another family out in Las Vegas. And he was a boss from the East Coast. And he showed up, the boss. And I wanted to make sure that my tapes reflected that we met with him. And he mentioned him by name. And I go, Joey? And he's like, no, Joey, the guy Joey we met with. Joey from last week? No. And he gets so mad, he goes, Jesus Christ, what are you, stupid? Listen, what is this kid, stupid? No, Joey, blah, blah, blah. And he'd say his name. All right, I got that. We're good. You know, so keep going. So, you know, but again, I pushed the envelope sometimes doing that.
Yeah.
You know, if he went back to sleep and had another dream that night, maybe I don't come out of it, you know? So you had to be real careful.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, because, you know, you don't want to push too much, because then if you do, then, you know, then like you said, they'll start being suspicious. But you had a solid background story that, you know, hey, I'm Italian and stuff, but I don't know shit about this, you know, this life. I was in the you know, with the bikers and stuff.
Yeah, I got challenged. Some guys challenged me along the way, and I was able to roll my sleeves up and say, look at my tattoos. You know, listen. And they challenged me on it. And again, being a teenager when I was a kid, you know, I was a one-man gang. Like I never, even with me and you, if we grew up together, you know, I was always smart enough. I'm not proud of the way I grew up, right? If you and I didn't steal cars, right? I don't want my kids to ever listen to this and read my book and think I was some kind of criminal. But in my neighborhood, think of an episode of Sopranos, right? Like you got to get your car's oil changed. It was so safe in my neighborhood growing up that you would just bring it down to the auto shop and you wouldn't lock it. You'd leave your keys. There was no night drop. You left your keys above the visor, you know, and then, you know, that guy would change your oil. He'd call you up the next day or a few days later when your car was ready and you left it. All right, leave my keys. I'll come, you know, square up with you whenever. We knew as kids that those keys were there. So we took the car and we go over Staten Island, right? You know, we drive into New York. We really, most of the time went into Staten Island, right? So we drive over to Bayonne Bridge and we go into Staten Island. I was never stupid enough to drive the car. I'd make you drive the car. You know, why? Because I'm not going to sit in the back seat. Those are the guys that always get pinched. They can't get out fast enough. So I'd always be in the front passengers. And if you got pulled over, I'd bail out first and I'd run, you know? Yeah. So, you know, I kept that in mind too. So I lived my life like that in this life. I had that survival mode already. So I would be very careful on how I tread water and where I went. So, yeah.
Because when it came down to you, especially with them, you know, in the crime family, it was about you, you know, I mean, you had to watch your own ass, you know what I mean? And I mean, yeah, they're with you, you know, but they don't know, you know, that you're undercover at any moment. You know, if your cover's blown, boom, you're gone. If they would have found out.
Yeah. I had a guy come to me and say, like, you know, where'd you come from? Like, who are you to ask me that? You know, so I went at him hard and he came at me hard and he goes, yeah, but I don't understand. You walk like us, you talk like us, you look like us, but you're about the same age as me, right, G? Yeah. So where you been? Like, oh, I see what you're getting at. Listen, I never bought into this. You know, like I was you know, this is who I was. If you want to know who I was, now that I know you, I'll tell you my backstory. See this tattoo here? And I'd pull up my arms and I'd show him and I'd say, and he'd go, oh, I get it now. Okay. So, all right, that's why you weren't around us. You were with those people. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You would out.
Yeah, and I mean, you had quite a few. I mean, in the book, you probably detail a few really close calls. You know, I mean, is there a certain one you want to talk about?
I'll give you one. One of the worst ones. So towards the end of the case, they gave me the nod to kill the guys, and I was supposed to. Well, I'll say the guy. I was supposed to kill a guy, and they gave me the hit, and I sat down, and Charlie told me they were going to kill him, and then I kind of acted surprised, and I was surprised, and then you know we were at dinner in Las Vegas, and he says to me, and they're going to, you know, the administration decided that, you know, he's got to go, and that's that, and I said, oh, okay, well, you know. But he's been in this the whole, you know, and I would try to talk, like, you know, just make a conversation. And there were some rough times between me and Luigi. Okay. And he accused me, and there were some incidents that led up to him kind of calling me out on some things. And I had some rough times with him. And he said, I brought up to Charlie and I said, well, you know, it's like he's breaking my balls about this, and this. And he goes, yeah, I know. And that's why I told the administration that you would do it. I do what? You know, and he says that you would kill him. You're going to do it. You're going to kill these guys. Originally, there was multiple guys on the list, right? And then they cut it back to just Luigi. And so when that happened, I was like, oh, you know, now I got to navigate this hit. So yeah, it was tough. It was tough because now I had to talk about the murder without committing the murder, postpone the murder. And then I introduced the fact that I would use, you know, I kind of let them decide, you want me to use my crew? And then they decided no. So now the murder's in play. I'm going to plan a murder. They knew I was running with some outlaw bikers. They knew that I had some connections to some outlaws because I was doing some dope deals between Hawaii and the mainland. And Charlie knew that. And I was doing dope deals with these guys. And they were other undercovers, other FBI undercovers that were the bikers. So Charlie knew that, and I kind of introduced the fact of using them. I kind of guided him towards thinking that way. So he said, use those guys. And so now the murder's being planned, and I was going to my shop. I had a little office that I had where I would meet my guys, and our crew would meet. And I'm going one night, and I don't have any of my recorders on, and I pulled into a gas station, and I'm a little bit too vain at that point in my life. And, you know, I wear cheaters, you know, reading glasses. So here I am trying to plug a battery in. You know, and I'm trying to turn my recorders on, and I can't see the switch. And I'm trying hard. And I can't see anything, right? So I decided to turn the dome light on. I take it and I put it up here. I got the wires hanging out. I'm sitting there. I'm trying to plug it in, and I'm sitting in my Escalade. And as I'm doing that, my passenger door rips open, and there's a big black figure wearing a big black leather jacket with a Yankee hat on backwards and screams, "Give me all your money," and screams, "Give me all your fucking money." And I take the wires and I stick them, and I just instantly, instinctively shove them under my seat. And the guy's Charlie's son. And he was coming to meet me that night. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 gee, it's me. Don't shoot, it's me." He thinks I'm reaching for a gun. So by that time, we were planning the murder. So we were up on a wiretap. We were listening to everybody's phones. And the next day, Anthony, Charlie's son, called Charlie and said, "Did G tell you what happened last night? He almost shot me." And he tells him the story. So, thank God, because if Anthony would have walked up slowly and said, "Gee, what are you doing here in the gas station? Everything okay? Did your car break down?" And if he would have hesitated or just came up a little bit like a gentleman would have come up, instead of fucking around like a teenager, he might have seen something different.
Yeah.
And I might not be here sitting there talking to you right now. So, again, we were able to listen to the conversation, and, he told Charlie what happened. It was validation of, Charlie's like, "You fucking idiot."
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're already on edge, at that point, so, I mean, there's all that shit going on, and then boom, you just see this door open. I mean, luckily, I'm sure you probably had a gun or something. I mean, what was going through your head? Were you thinking, "Oh, I need to grab a gun," or just hide that?
No, I didn't carry a gun all the time, right? Because
Okay.
you never, gangsters, some gang, if you needed it, you had one close by.
Yeah.
I didn't carry them all the time because, again, I don't. There's no reason for me, right? I'm not going to hurt you. Why would I bring a gun to a meeting? Unless I thought there were organizations that I dealt with other than Italians that I brought guns to because they were all murdering machines. I'm going into a room with 15 murderers, and they'll chop my head off. So I want them to know I'm armed, and I would walk in. Just so you know, I got a gun, and they would say, "All right, just so you know, we got 15, So, but yeah, I wouldn't take a gun everywhere I went. And, but it was a slippery slope, and there's been a couple of those. That was just an example, but I write about them in a book. There's been a few.
Yeah. So, when did this case all come to an end? That you can, kind of wrap up on.
2000. It ended in 2015. It came down.
Okay.
So, we thwarted the murder. We got enough evidence on the murder, the conspiracy, and all the other stuff we needed, and it was tightly wrapped up. And by that point, when the arrest happened, they kind of knew right away it was me. You got to remember years of tapes, years of deals and crimes and tapes and conversations that, I was in the crew. I was running a crew for him. He was overseeing it, and then the guys are reporting to me. So the guys who did get arrested, there was no way anybody was going to trial. You don't want to hear your own voice. Nobody wanted to. As soon as you got the discovery and heard, once they knew it was me, it was pretty much over. Like some of the agents that did the arrests, some guys were overheard during the arrests. Call G and tell them to run. So here they are getting arrested, and they're looking out for me because they were reporting to me, and just tell them to run. Just call G, get a hold of G, and tell them to run. And the agents were chuckling. Some young agents, and they were getting a kick out of it. But they knew right away. So kind of most of the guys at their first appearance, they were just like, "Your Honor, listen, I'm done. Just, stick me in a can. Let me start getting credit. Like a true gangster would do. Just let me start getting credit for my sentence." And, so some guys were on a bracelet for a little bit and then got sentenced. And so, it was a wrap. And then for me, unfortunately, it was the end of my career, and it caused me to relocate and everything I did. But my family.
Yeah, I mean, you went through a lot with it too, when that case ended, because it wasn't just you it wasn't just all them that went away, I mean, you had to move away too and, deal with I suppose the outcome of that. And, I mean, eventually you came out and stuff. I mean, you're still in hiding and stuff now? I mean, you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I'm cautious. There's mechanisms in place, and they still have, I'm cautious in what I do. And, there's still evaluations they do and all kinds of stuff in place for me and my family. But it is what it is. It was the right time for me to come out. Of course, I wrote the book, but again, it's my calling to be a cop, to be in law enforcement. And when I saw what was going on in the social discourse and everything with these young police officers and the mental health stuff, I knew it was the right time for me to start coming out, because I really needed to be there for these guys that were taking their lives. And, too many of these guys were feeling unappreciated. And, if I could help in any way, that's kind of really, I wanted the book to be something that was a teaching component at the time. But, of course, everybody in my publisher even says everybody loves a good mafia story. So, it's not more of an education book than it is. So, I guess that's why I was so raw in the book, and my emotions and how I felt. And because I wanted people to see what guys risk, right? Not just undercovers, but police in general every day, and what they go through. It was the right thing for me and the right time for me to do it.
Yeah, I mean, your book, I mean, I really thought it was interesting and I enjoyed it. And I really liked how you described that home life, because it wasn't, all, happy, what I mean? Because you were gone for all these, days and hours or months. I mean, I really don't, I mean, you would go so many days without coming home, and then, your wife would be upset and stuff. And, so it definitely had an emotional toll on you and your family. And, you know, I mean, you were the good guy taking down bad guys, but yet you still had to, go through and deal with the repercussions of all that, and miss family time and stuff. So, I mean, how is it now for you?
It's good. I have good days and bad days, right? When I go out and I might do a speaking engagement or something, my wife is smart enough to say, look, don't come home right away, because, telling the stories or reliving it might, a little bit of Giovanni Gatto might be coming out a little more than, so it is an emotional roller coaster at times, but, you balance it. And I have put my life back together. What you described after the case was over was my worst time. The short distance after the case, because I sat around and thought, well, what did I do wrong? You got me here sitting and hiding in my house. You won't let me leave not that they won't let me leave my house, but there was so many mechanisms in place that, here I went back to my old way, growing a big beard and looking like a biker because I was in hiding. And then I was pretty much under house arrest for 9 months until they could figure out where I was going to, what was going to happen with me and my career, and all the decisions were made, So, that was a bit of a mental challenge and navigating through. And then, imagine sitting on your couch all day.
Yeah.
Your wife saying you're going to sit here all day, you only get away with that about 1 or 2 times a week,
Shit, yeah. If that.
If that, right? And then, afterwards, and this, what do I do now? I gave my life to this job.
Yeah.
I sacrificed like so many other guys have done. And when you do, whether it's a mental injury or a physical injury, when a guy leaves the job, you feel that detachment from your brothers and your sisters and just your purpose, right? This was my purpose. Every cop has something that he likes to do, whether it's patrol, whether it's radar, whether it's, homicide investigators. I did a little bit of everything. And I was fortunate in law enforcement. I did everything, but my niche was undercover work. I loved it. So I would go back to doing any of it. I'd go back to being a homicide investigator again. But that wasn't in the cards for me. So what do I do now? Become a magician? Be a party clown?
Right. So I mean, you became an author.
Yeah, so I became an author.
So you did end up retiring pretty early. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you retired?
I was younger than 50 when I retired.
Damn. Yeah. So definitely an early retirement.
Yeah.
And now you get to spend all this time. I suppose it's a good thing, I mean, you get to spend time with family now, what I mean, and just enjoy it.
I'm blessed, right? Time that I missed out, I made up for, So, but time flies by fast, right? Your kids get old, and before you know it, So it definitely makes you realize, like anybody else, right? And that's the thing, guys that did bids in the can, guys that did prison sentences are the same way, right? Not in the same way, but they were gone for so long that the guilt when they come out and they miss so much of their family's life, because of your actions, whether you did time in prison or you did time as an undercover and so much time away from my family, or just the, investigators chasing down homicide suspects. You can miss days or a week away from your family. You miss all that time out. And then sometimes this thing up here, the mind is a terrible thing because you just beat yourself up for it. So,
no, you're right. I mean, even if, even in nothing even compared to you, but I mean, for me, even as a dad too, just working, if I'm working long hours, and just, you start feeling like the guilt or something like, damn, I'm missing out on family time and shit. And even if it's just a few extra hours, you know what I mean? But,
Right.
It's just, yeah, your mind, if you just sit and think, it's going to mess with you. And that's for damn sure.
Well, and you have to find that balance, right? Because you do. What's my purpose as a father and a husband is to provide for my family, like you said, right? And then when you're away for so long, it's like, well, you want to live a good life, right? You want to have food, you want to have a nice house. I'm providing for my family, but you got to find, you have to find that balance, but in it, and I love it again, it's invest in yourself, right? You have to find the time to invest in yourself and your own mental health, because it's the most important thing. And I think I appreciate now society paying so much attention, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's been a lot different from when you were growing up. I mean, you see it everywhere now. Shit, everything, ads, fucking TV, on the shows. I mean, there's so much.
I appreciate it now. Growing up, even on the job, I've seen the worst. Right, I've seen the worst of what human beings can do to each other. I've seen mothers cut their kids up into pieces, and not to traumatize, but literally, I've seen the worst, and you never talked about it. Now I encourage guys, because I realize I carried that stuff for so long, and that trauma and that mental, you were never allowed. You couldn't. That was weak. You talked about it, and you'd say, "Hey, man, I'm feeling a certain way about what I just saw." No way. Especially the environment where I worked and the streets where I worked. You could see something like that and then finish it, write a report about it, and then you went right on to the next call.
Yeah.
And then the trauma that you carried along. So I'm glad that they're bringing awareness to it, because it is important, for everybody. It doesn't matter what your job is. Like you said, time away from your kids could create guilt and create you feel like you're isolated from your family. So
yeah, no, I agree with you, man. No, I'm glad they got all that stuff out there too. But I do appreciate you coming on, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and did you have anything else you want to add or say comments? Or I mean, obviously you got your book to promote.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Like you covered it earlier. It's out there, and I love the reviews. I love the feedback. And if there's any questions, the website giovanniring.com. People could order it if they want one signed. They can go on there, and I'll ship one out. I'll have them ship it out to you, and you can put a little note in there if you want to personalize it. They'll give me a note, send me a note to personalize it to you. And, there's an audio book, and we'll see where it goes from there and see what's next. But I appreciate you having me on, Adrian.
Yeah, man. Hopefully they maybe make a movie for you.
Donnie Brasco. Your lips to God's ears, right? Who knows? Who knows? You never know.
Yeah, just like Joe Pistone, the Donnie Brasco, man, that one was a classic. I think your story's right up there with him, because I mean, you were right in there. I mean, you were in the mix with all these guys, man. I mean, just a different crime family, but you were around all the other families too, you know what I mean? But the main one you infiltrated was the DeCavalcantes, right? So I think you really got a interesting story, man. I think it's just starting to get out there.
I appreciate it, but there's so many other guys that have done great work that I'd love to see their stories out there, and guys that have done some crazy stuff. And I appreciate it, though.
Yeah, no, I think you got a good story, man. And, thank you guys for watching. Comment any key takeaways that you got from this. Please don't forget to hit subscribe. And if you want to support me and my brand, I got t-shirts, hoodies, and all that other kind of good stuff. I'll put a link in the description, and at the end of this video, I'll put a playlist of, all my other Mafia interviews with cops and different stuff like that. And thanks again, Giovanni, for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care. Ciao.
Well, what'd you think? Giovanni's got a hell of a story. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this video. Please share it with someone that you think will enjoy it. Also, please don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to get more interviews like this. I'll put Giovanni's book link in the video description. And if you want to support me and my clothing brand, I got t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, and sweats. I'll put my website link in the video description as well. And at the end of this interview, I'll put a playlist of all my other Mafia-related interviews. Thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate it.